Imagine you're on the floor and the monitor alarms, and you look up and that fetal strip is squiggly. What does that mean? Well, the NCLEX loves this moment. Why? Because it's not just about reading that strip, it's what it means for that baby. Is this reassuring, or is this a red flag saying we need help? Hi everyone, I'm Miriam, and we're going to make fetal monitoring easy to decode. You'll know your baselines, your accelerations, and exactly what each deceleration is trying to tell you. By the end of this, you're going to learn baby's secret language and not just know how to interpret those strips, but you'll speak baby. If you saw these 4 fetal heart rate monitoring strips on the NCLEX, which one would be your priority? Well, we're going to circle back to this at the end and see if you keep your answer the same. So during labor, what are we monitoring for? Well, we're going to look at those uterine contractions to assess labor progression, and we're going to look at that fetal heart rate to see how that fetus is tolerating labor. Now, how will we monitor all that? We can use external monitoring, and that's going to use an ultrasound transducer to look at that fetal heart rate, and a tachydynamometer that is going to measure those uterine contractions. Now, if that strip doesn't look good or we need more accurate monitoring, we might use an internal device. This is where we use a fetal scalp electrode that goes right underneath that fetal scalp to look at the fetal heart rate, and an intrauterine pressure catheter that goes right up inside of that uterus to measure the uterine strength, contraction frequency, and duration. Now, it's really important to remember that this is invasive, so the client must have her membranes ruptured and be at least 2 centimeters dilated. Now, remember, because it's invasive, this is a huge infection risk, so we try not to use this. So we have our monitor all set up. What do that fetal heart rate and the contraction tracings tell us? Well, we have to look at both components and their characteristics and their relationship to each other, where fetal heart rate is going to be on the top and contractions are at the bottom. Now, to assess those contractions, we consider duration and frequency. So duration is going to be normally 40 to 90 seconds, and this is the time from the beginning to the end of a single contraction. And then we have frequency. This is going to be normally every 2 to 5 minutes, and this is the time from the beginning of one contraction to the beginning of the next contraction. And the time between contractions is going to be known as a rest period. During this rest period, there's this uteroplacental reperfusion that happens, and this is where that uterus refills with blood and oxygen for that placenta and baby. So can contractions occur too frequently? Yes, that's going to be known as uterine tachysystole. This is going to be when we have over 5 contractions in 10 minutes. And contractions that are too frequent means that blood, oxygen, and nutrients don't get to that fetus, and this can cause fetal distress. So we want to be on the lookout for contractions that are over 5 within a 10-minute period, and we want to slow or stop those uterine contractions to promote that uteroplacental reperfusion. So we would do this by stopping oxytocin or giving a tocolytic like terbutaline in order to slow or stop those uterine contractions. Now you know what it looks like when you see contractions, but what about that fetal heart rate? What is a normal fetal heart rate pattern? Well, baseline is going to be 110 to 160. If we have above 160, that's fetal tachycardia. Now, this can be caused by anything that increases the maternal heart rate, so things like fever or dehydration. What about below 110? Well, that's going to be fetal bradycardia, and that can be caused by maternal hypoglycemia. Either way, we're just going to treat the cause. So antipyretics for fever, fluids to fix dehydration, or fixing that mom's blood sugar. Now, what about the squiggly fetal heart rate that we see? Well, that's known as variability. And variability is just your baby's heart rate dancing around on that monitor. And when we look at this, we're assessing for fetal well-being. This is like Goldilocks and the 3 bears. We don't want too much or too little. So marked is going to be these big movements, which can be a normal variant. And moderate is going to be reassuring or good. And this means we're just right. Moderate is our favorite variability to see. Now, remember this start point. If you see minimal or absent fetal heart rate variability, it almost looks like a flat line. And this can mean that the fetus is in a deep fetal sleep state, or it can mean that we have fetal hypoxia, which means trouble. So we need to assess this minimal or absent fetal heart rate variability a little further to make sure we're not in trouble. So if you have minimal fetal heart rate variability, we'll monitor, but we'll try to wake that baby up with a vibroacoustic stimulator. Now, if that is minimal or absent variability accompanied by fetal bradycardia, so that heart rate is less than 110, then we have fetal hypoxia. And that means we need to provide our intrauterine resuscitation or stop-in. Now, what is stop-in? Well, stop-in is our emergency checklist for non-reassuring tracings. And the NCLEX loves to ask about these interventions because they want to be sure you know how to respond and fix that fetal heart rate. So anytime you have a non-reassuring fetal heart rate, you're going to provide these interventions. So we'll stop that oxytocin or give a tocolytic to slow or stop those uterine contractions, since those could be causing the fetal distress. We'll give oxygen if that mom's hypoxemic, so we can make sure that fetus is getting enough oxygen. We'll do some repositioning non-reassuring, so preferably left lateral for that mom, and increase IV fluids. And these are going to help increase uteroplacental perfusion. And then, of course, we'll need to notify that healthcare provider. All right, time for your first NCLEX quick check. So pause and try to answer. What does minimal or absent fetal heart rate variability without fetal bradycardia indicate? What interventions did you perform? Well, this indicates a deep fetal sleep state, which can be okay, but we want to attempt to wake that fetus with a vibroacoustic stimulator. What does minimal or absent variability with fetal bradycardia indicate, and what interventions did you perform? Well, this indicates that we have fetal hypoxia, which is not good. So we want to perform our stop-in interventions. So that's stop oxytocin, tocolytics, give oxygen, positioning, preferably left lateral, increase those IV fluids, and notify that healthcare provider. Now, would you know how to recognize whether a change in a fetal heart rate pattern was an emergency or not? What if you saw a deceleration in that fetal heart rate or an acceleration? Well, decelerations are drops in that fetal heart rate, and sometimes they're completely normal, and other times they signal distress. And accelerations are increases in fetal heart rate. But what is okay and normal, and what requires you to use those stop-in interventions? Well, the key is knowing the type. And to determine the type, we assess the shape and the timing of that fetal heart rate change in relation to the uterine contraction. And this is where our helpful mnemonic VEAL CHOP comes in. So variable decelerations indicate cord compression. Early decelerations indicate head compression. Accelerations indicate everything is okay, and late decelerations indicate that we have placental insufficiency. So the VEAL is our fetal heart rate pattern, and CHOP is going to be the cause. So these in red mean we're in trouble, and those are the ones you would provide your stop-in interventions on. And those in green mean everything's okay, and we're going to continue to monitor. But let's dive in. So for our variable decelerations, it's important to understand this is different than variability that we discussed. These are deceleration. So this is a V-shaped fetal heart rate pattern that's independent from that contraction. So that means it can happen anytime, before, during, or after a uterine contraction. And these can happen from cord compression. So things like an umbilical cord prolapse, where that cord prematurely delivers before the fetus and is trapped between the head and the maternal structures. Or it could be just from a trapped cord. So when the NCLEX gives you a client with variable decelerations, what will you do? Well, if it's cord compression, then we want to relieve that compression. So this might mean lifting that fetal head off the presenting part and repositioning the mom. And of course, we'll provide those stop-in interventions. Now, what about decelerations that mirror the uterine contraction? Well, those decelerations are called early decelerations. And this heart rate deceleration is bowl-shaped, and it mirrors that contraction. It is directly above it. And these are okay. This happens because of head compression, and it's a healthy autonomic response to the contraction as it compresses and squeezes on that fetal head, because it indicates progression to the second stage of labor, which means that that head is just low in that pelvis. So what will we do? Well, since these are okay, we'll continue to monitor, but we'll also assess to see the cervical dilation and prepare for delivery if it's imminent. Now, our next one is going to be fetal heart rate accelerations, and accelerations are opposite of our decelerations. This is where the heart rate is going to temporarily increase at least 15 beats per minute. These happen all the time throughout the pregnancy, and they don't have to align with uterine contractions. These are okay or indicate that we have healthy fetal well-being. Think about when you go up the stairs and your heart rate increases, and we want that, right? We wouldn't want our heart to be a flat line when we're moving around. We want fluctuations or accelerations in our own heart rate to get blood pumping throughout that body. And that's what's happening here. The baby's moving around because it's happy and it's healthy, so that fetal heart rate increases or accelerates. And this is a healthy response. What about late fetal heart rate decelerations? Well, these decelerations start after the contraction, unlike early decelerations that mirror the contraction. These are not good, and they indicate placental insufficiency or fetal hypoxia. Now, this can be from anything that interrupts blood flow, whether it's a drop in maternal blood pressure or a problem with that placenta, like a placental abruption, or not enough rest period for reperfusion, like with uterine tachysystole. So for this, we're going to treat that cause. So stopping oxytocin, giving IV fluids, and of course, we'll provide our intrauterine resuscitation or stop-in. All right, time for your next NCLEX quick check. So pause and answer. Which deceleration is abrupt and occurs independent of contractions? And what does it indicate? Well, remember, this is where we'll use our VEAL CHOP. So this is variable decelerations, and this means we have cord compression. Which deceleration mirrors the uterine contraction, and what does it mean? Well, if it's mirroring, then we have early decelerations, and it means head compression. That head is getting squeezed because we're close to delivery. Which deceleration starts after the contraction, and what does it indicate? These are late decelerations from placental insufficiency. Would you keep your answer the same? The first one here is early deceleration. So that means we might be getting close to delivery from that head getting squeezed. So we'll assess this mom's cervix and see how dilated she is. Next, number 2, we have fetal tachycardia. So that fetal heart rate is at or above 160. And for this, it can be caused by maternal fever or dehydration. So we definitely need to treat the cause. Here in number 3, we have late decelerations because that deceleration starts after the contraction. Remember, this means that we have placental insufficiency. So this fetus is not getting blood, oxygen, and nutrients like it should. And here in number 4 is accelerations. So remember that just means the baby is moving around, and so that fetal heart rate is accelerating in response, and that's a healthy response. So do we all agree the priority is late decelerations due to the uteroplacental insufficiency? So remember, use VEAL CHOP to help remember causes and stop in to provide interventions if that fetus is in any distress. Recognize the pattern, act quickly, and you'll keep mom and baby safe and ace that NCLEX. Okay, you're ready for fetal monitoring on the NCLEX.